I am Mudita, and welcome back to Satisfactory Update 1.2. In this save, I'm using a few of the new game modes that have just been added. Each phase requires 100 times the space elevator parts. Each machine takes 5 times the normal power, and all the resource nodes are random, and so is their purity. In the last video, I started building out my logistics infrastructure. I now have a road with rail lines and power towers that run from the Grassy Fields out to the Rocky Desert, making vehicles more viable in my opinion. Instead of doing the smart thing and making just enough fuel for my current and near future needs, I'm going to build a large packaged turbofuel factory to take care of, hopefully, all of my vehicle fuel needs for the save. I've already started on this new modular factory. The empty canisters and compacted coal are automated and ready to transport to this new factory. The compacted coal is working like a charm, and now that it's been a few minutes since we've gotten this thing up and running, now I can see which truck stations are completely empty. And here's a truck now. This little guy, we can just go ahead and delete. There's no coal in here. The other one I don't need anymore is this guy. Now I'm pretty sure if I just delete this, the one truck, yeah, there he is, or tractor I mean, just kind of stops, so now I can go delete him before he backs up all the rest of them. Yeah, and there he is. Terrific. Working my way backwards, now I can see which truck stations on this side are completely empty. And let's do a little bit more cleaning up. Terrific, it's these last two, so now I can just trace these all the way back to the coal generators and start cleaning up those two. I really didn't plan it out this way. I just got lucky that it ended up being all of the coal generators that are on this little offshoot. And all of those are just going to stay on for now. Just a few blueprints and a few belts and water extractors. And that's a small fraction of my coal generators gone. I've still got quite a few here. And then some more in that little crater lake. And then some more in the blue crater. But see, some of them were temporary. We take a look at the power. Not generating the 70,000 megawatts anymore, but I've still got a decent amount of available power. I hope Ada's proud of what I've done to the Grassy Fields. It sure looks different from the start. Before I dive into the main project of the Packaged Turbofuel, there's one little side project that I would like to get started just so it can work away in the background. Having a bunch of crude oil in the Grassy Fields is so weird, but man, it is coming in handy. Just gonna give myself some more foundations to work with here. And now I just need to throw together a really simple oil setup. So first thing, we need a refinery. So that's gonna take the crude oil. And from here, we're gonna create heavy oil residue. The heavy oil residue is gonna go from this refinery to this one. And then this one is going to be making smokeless powder. I've made some black powder, but I've also got some sulfur and coal right here. I just need a temporary setup so we can come in here to the MAM. Now that I have it available, next time I go exploring, I want the rifle. And some explosive rebar. I love the explosive rebar. But more importantly, I want the rifle. Alright, I've got my 2 refineries, my 1 assembler, and some storage containers. And that's all we need. It's not even overclocked, but those sloops bring it up to 600 megawatts for 1 refinery. Oh boy. Because it's a hand-fed setup and it's temporary, it's definitely worth slooping the 2. So I'm also slooping the black powder. Might as well get as much as I can for the little bit of coal and sulfur I have. Alright, there's a full stack. I think that's enough. Let's see what we can do. Oh, just a few more motors. Just gotta wait a couple more minutes to do the explosive rebar. I don't really need to wait around for that. I can just let this build up a whole bunch of smokeless powder, and then I'll just do another temporary setup to turn it into both the explosive rebar and the rifle ammo. With that one little side project out of the way, let's get into the main focus of the video. Packaged turbofuel. The first step is going to be to pick the location for this factory. But before we do that, let's take a look at the spreadsheet and go over how many machines I'm going to use, because that'll give me a better picture of just how much space it's going to take up. This is the plan for the whole factory. However, these bottom sections are already completed. I've got the compacted coal and the empty canisters ready to go. This is what I'll be working on today. To make the packaged turbofuel, I need turbofuel and the empty canisters. The default turbofuel is really easy. We just need fuel and that compacted coal that I'm making. To make that fuel, I'm going to go with the diluted packaged fuel alternate recipe, which takes advantage of another alternate recipe, the heavy oil residue. Making that heavy oil residue will give me a byproduct of a little bit of polymer resin. I'm going to turn that resin into plastic and then the plastic into empty canisters. And that'll give me a fraction of the canisters that I need, hence having to make that whole other setup in the last video just for canisters. So if we look at the amount of machines that I need, for those last steps, the plastic and the empty canisters, very few machines. In total, I actually only need 5 refineries to make all of the heavy oil residue that I need. And then turning it into fuel needs about 7 refineries and packagers. The step that requires the most amount of machines is the turbofuel. It's unfortunately one of those recipes where each machine just doesn't output a ton, and I need almost just as many packagers. So obviously, I'm just going to pair those up 1 to 1. But if you saw the video going over the plastic and rubber factory right behind me here, you'll probably notice a familiar theme. I'm going to break this down into a whole bunch of little systems. So instead of only placing 5 for the heavy oil residue, I'm going to place just as many refineries for that step as I am that final step. And of course, I've made some blueprints for those. Before we get to the blueprints, let's talk about where this factory is going to go though. This whole mess up here are my empty canisters. On the other side of the grassy fields, I've got my compacted coal. And then right in the middle, kind of hidden underneath the road, is my crude oil. And I also need some water, but there's a little lake there and I only need 400 water. If this is going to be where I put my road and train station, I kind of want to put the fuel close because that's going to be one of the major things that goes out of this. So I did really think about starting to just delete a lot more of my towers. I do have a healthy stockpile of almost all of the materials. Now, things like concrete and iron plates, I could probably go through without even trying. So those I would definitely need to replace, but the rest of them, I could probably get away with deleting these things for a while. But I know myself, there's no way I'm going to keep track of it, and all of a sudden I'm just going to be out and not be producing reinforced iron plates or something. I really don't want that to happen. So at some point, I do want to move these, but not today. It's probably going to overhang somewhere over here, but this is the location I'm thinking of. I need quite a few machines, but I think I can fit them all over here without running into that giant rock pillar. I just need to throw some Nobilis around and get rid of some gas clouds and trees. But first, let's jump over to my creative save so we can go through the blueprints I'm going to use. Here we are in the creative world. Makes things a little bit easier when I can fly. Excluding the residual plastic and empty canisters, I've been able to cram everything else into 2 blueprints. And I'm sorry to anybody that looks for my blueprints on the Google Drive. My naming convention could definitely be better. But this is the 3rd version of my diluted package fuel setup. And it's very similar to the other ones that I've used. So we've got the main bus that's going to have my crude oil, water, and then the output of the polymer resin is going to get all grouped together. First machine is going to do heavy oil residue. The heavy oil residue goes from one refinery to the next, and then the polymer resin just goes into the merger and groups up with the rest of them. The next refinery is doing the diluted packaged fuel. So with the heavy oil residue, it just needs packaged water. So that's what this packager is doing. It's getting the water from the main bus. And because like with the rest of these, this is going to be a closed loop. So the empty canisters are going to be fed from above. And because they're going to be stacked on top of each other and the packagers aren't just right next to each other like I have with my power setups, I've preloaded it with an entire stack of empty canisters. I've got quite a few laying around in my main save now. That creates the fuel. Nothing too new there. Because I'm going to be utilizing floor holes again, I included the floor with this blueprint. The more I can include with blueprints like this, the easier it gets when I go to place a bunch of them. So on the second floor, we've got the refinery and 2 more packagers. And in the past, I would avoid doing this like the plague. I much prefer nice round numbers, or at least, 18.75. That's close enough. Easy fractions of a number aren't too bad, but things like this, I would really try to avoid. 22 and 2/9. But really for stuff like this, you definitely want to do it in the clock speed because this is going to give you a more accurate number than if you were to do it in the target production rate field. Just in case you're wondering what the crazy math on this looks like, this is what I did. 333 and a third as a fraction would be 1,000 over 3. Now, I know I don't need these parentheses, but it just helps me sort everything else out. So that's the amount I want to make divided by the amount of machines I'm going to use. Since I need 17.7, I'm just going to round up to 18 because that's a really easy number to do the load balancing for the compacted coal. So 18 machines divided by the default rate of 18.75. And then we're going to multiply by 100 for the percentage. And that's how we get that crazy number there. And now I'm working everything off of those numbers, or the fact that I'm going to have one of every machine for these. I put in the exact same number over here, except for the default rate is 20 instead of the 18.75. The layout for all this is pretty simple. The packaged fuel is going to come up this lift, go into the packager, get unpackaged. The fuel will go into the refinery. The empty canisters will go downstairs and into the water packager. The refinery will turn the fuel in the compacted coal into turbo fuel, and then that will go up and over into this packager. And then that is going to go down, and then I'm probably going to gather everything on the ceiling. I think that'll just be the easiest way to group it all up. But from here, I've got options. These 2 blueprints take care of the large majority of the work. The only other thing I need to do is take care of this polymer resin. But I need so few machines to deal with that it's easier just to have that as its own separate thing. Alright, so let's jump back over to the main save where I have paved over another part of the grassy fields. We're back with some more foundations. It does seem like it's going to overhang a bit. But like I said, that's just something fun for future me to figure out. I know I said we were going to jump into the project now, but there's just one last little detour I want to make. I came over here to check on the compacted coal, make sure everything's running smooth and I don't need to make any changes before I just get sucked into this new project for a few hours. And then I looked over at my massive storage unit for the extra space elevator parts. I've got a few automated wiring, but I've deleted all those towers, so I'm not adding any more to this. The smart plating, however, has just been consistently piling up at 30 per minute. And I've got just over 51,000 of them now. Means it's time for another temporary setup. I figured I could get away with running this for at least a little while, but to no one's surprise, I can't run very many of these things. Completely overclocked and slooped, this uses almost 3,700 megawatts of power for one machine. Yikes. But since I have so many containers of the smart plating, I figure I should start chewing through at least some of them. With that working away, double check the power. Nothing to worry about until I turn on this next factory probably. But let's go build it. Sorry, Bean. I think I'm just gonna leave you there. Now it's finally time for some blueprints. I've got my diluted packaged fuel setup version 3. I think I'll give myself 2 foundations of a gap on the side here. 3 here in the front should hopefully be enough. And then the main bus is going to run right down the middle. So same thing as all the rest. We're going to do half of them on one side, and then we'll just flip the blueprint around, do the other half on this side. All right, so there's one blueprint auto connect. If I actually use the to-do list, it's so much easier to keep track of. Alright, so 1 down, 17 to go. And that's half. Just to give my dimensional depots another minute to refill, I'm just going to go down the line and connect all these power connections. And pretty much everything is stacked here in the middle, and I don't think I'm going to need a whole lot to go down the very center of these blueprints. I think just one foundation is going to be more than enough space. The only thing I really had to wait on was the empty canisters, and thankfully I really didn't have to wait too long. And this is the majority of the machines I need here on the first floor. And I just need to do my usual, connect these things on the back end here. Let's cut that end off. There we go, get the right color pipes. On this side is where everything's going to get plugged in. So I think I'm going to place a junction just right here on the foundation. Right there in the middle. And I want 2 of them, so I might as well nudge the first one up. Now I can place that one there. Now that I'm looking at it, I would really like the polymer resin to not end here. I would actually prefer it to end at this one. I've got just enough space over here to be able to place the 6 refineries I need for the polymer resin, so I think it would be easiest if those came out this way instead of having to cross over. I think that's going to make for a better layout. Now let's move on to the second floor. Now I've just zooped up a bunch of foundations to give myself kind of a place to snap this next one to. Alright, so I think that should be directly above the other one. And let's check the distance. I think that's a good height. Plenty of room for the smokestacks. Now that I've got one place, this should be a little bit easier, because I only need it in blueprint mode. These aren't auto-connecting with each other. I only need these to connect with down below. But actually, before I place that, let's make sure everything's lined up correctly. So this looks like I am exactly 1 foundation over. All right. So we'll just do that. Actually, I think the easiest way would be line up the second one. There we go. And now we can just nudge it back. Alright, now let's double check. This one should plug directly into the refinery. Terrific. And then the empty canisters will come out here. Plug into that packager. And then the final product will come out right there. So I'll probably end up doing something with the mergers. Now that we can place them just directly on the ceiling. I love this change so much. It was such a pain when you couldn't. But I'll figure that out last once I have everything else in place. And I can work around all the other lifts that are already there. Alright, so now we just delete that one. Don't actually need that. Alright, looks good. And that's half of them. Alright, so now if I flip this 180 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so that's how much of a gap between those. That should be everything lined up. But let's place one and double check. Alright. And just another 8 more for this side. Between the two floors, that's over 100 machines I just placed. Blueprints just make this so much easier. Alright, so that served its purpose. Now I just need to go around and connect a whole bunch of lifts. 2 lifts and 1 belt for each of these blueprint pairs. Now all the lifts are in. I love these setups just because you get to see all of the packaged fuel go up and empty canisters go down. I enjoy watching the endless loop. After I took care of those, then I came upstairs and did a little bit of the belt work for the empty canisters. I've got 18 blueprints, which is a fantastic number to work with. Every 3 blueprints gets grouped together with 1 splitter there. And then I just need 1 more splitter to split between those 3 groups of 3. So that's 9, and then I'll just need 1 last splitter in the middle to combine the 2 halves. But I'm going to wait to figure out where exactly I'm putting that because I still need a little bit more work. Most of the empty canisters are coming from those towers right there. But for the remaining 66 some odd canisters, those are coming from this polymer resin. Alright, I'm not sure exactly how many refineries I said I needed earlier, but it probably wasn't right. I only need 2. These are most likely going to end up getting moved because there's some other things I want to do with this area right here. But both of these are going to be set up to do the residual plastic. This is going to be making 33 and a third. And that's really not too bad. 100 divided by 3 gets me that number. But I can also just work with the polymer resin since those are nice whole numbers. I've got 100 polymer resin. I'm going to use 2 machines. The default rate would be 60 polymer resin per machine. Multiply that by 100. Each one will make 16 and 2/3, which is half of that 33 and a third. And then from there, I'm just going to throw that into 2 constructors. And we'll just space these out so that we can just directly feed the plastic straight into here. And these will use the default empty canister recipe. And because this is a 2-to-1 ratio, that 33 and a third is going to get turned into 66 and 2/3 empty canisters. So instead of 100 over 3, now I'll just do 200 divided by 3. That'll get me my 66. Divide that by the 2 machines, divided by the default rate of 60, and then multiply by 100 for our percentage. Terrific. That takes care of all the polymer resin and ensures that the heavy oil residue can continue to flow, and gives me some of the empty canisters I need. The reason I said this might get moved, and I'm already realizing, yeah, I don't think I gave myself enough space. I'm going to push those probably up a little bit farther, because right here is where I think I'm going to put my truck stations. So here's the start of the road, although I'll probably change this up a bit, but it gave me an idea of where the path would be able to go. So I'm thinking I'm going to elevate it so that I can work around this hill. And that way I won't need more ramps to bring down the tractor all the way to this elevation. Alright, so this is what I've got so far. Still going to need to ramp down just a little bit more, but this way it's not too super elevated. And I've blocked off just enough space so that the water pipe and the conveyor can go all the way over to the last 2 refineries. I need 400 water to make all of the fuel, and then only 33 and a third for those 2 refineries. So I figure I can probably just split off that pipe and everything should be fine. But I'm already thinking I'm probably going to change this. Originally I was thinking I could throw the water extractors down in this lake. Honestly, it's not that far and I could just use pipes if I wanted to. But I'm making all of this fuel, and I would really like to use one of these new fluid trucks. So I'm going to be bringing in the water by truck. This road right here is just going to be for a tractor because it's such a short distance. I don't need the cargo capacity of the truck. I could probably navigate the terrain, but it would be so much easier if I just used a road to go get that water. And using the main road is a bit overkill if I only need to have 1 vehicle on each of these paths. So I came up with this new simple road. And so it's going to be much smaller. Each path is just going to have the 1 foundation. And I really wanted to use the road barriers more because I just don't use them a whole lot. And I would love to use them as, actual road barriers. But the unfortunate part is they won't go diagonal. So unless I want things to look real weird on a ramp, I needed something else. So I decided to use the beam to kind of divide the road on the ramps. They don't necessarily transition the best in my opinion, so I'm still a little undecided. I don't know of another thing that ramps as well as beams, so I may end up just switching this blueprint out to be all beams, just so it's a little bit more consistent. And then I'm just using some fences along the flat piece, and then I run into the same issue where these can't go on ramps, so I'm just using the industrial railing instead. And I haven't gotten too far. The road goes to right here. So originally the plan was to go down and grab that lake water. But if we go into camera mode, there is another option that would probably be even easier. And I think it would be that lake. I think it's technically just a tiny bit farther. But this way I could just go straight and then turn right there and I'm right at the lake. It's probably a tiny bit farther, but it's less elevation that I have to lose and then climb each trip. I don't know if that really makes a difference, but I think for future planning also, it would be easier if I had the road going this way and not just cut straight through the middle of the grassy fields and have to build around that later. This path will be a little bit more out of the way. Just like the other ones, these snap together real easily. The one thing that I've learned in doing this so far is that saving paths on the ramps just never work out quite as well as I want them to. So I've tried to save them, at different spots, like not all the way at the edge, but the issue always seems to be, it seems like it curls ever so slightly right where you place it. And then when you place the other one, you end up with this weird little bump for every single connection it seems to have. Maybe it'll be smooth here. Okay, so it's a little bit smoother here, but wherever you start it, I'm sure I probably could have played around with it, but I find it easier just to not have the path on the ramps, and then I just place it here, and then just go all the way up to the top. And the vehicles seem to ride along these just a little bit better. Now I can use my Blueprint Auto Connect. And I'll be out at that lake in no time. But of course there's a giant rock and this is going to be way too big. Yeah, didn't think so. But it's always worth a try. So that's a little too close. But that's why I made a short version that's only 2 foundations instead of the full 5. And then the piece that I spent the most time creating was trying to get a corner to work. This was a lot more challenging. Part of the reason why I made the main blueprint road so wide, each side of the road has almost 2 full foundations, and it made navigating any of the corners and everything way easier to deal with. When you're only giving yourself 1 foundation, it becomes quite a bit harder for the trucks to be able to navigate these corners. So instead of doing just a really sharp 90-degree turn and basically just not having this in there, if I did this and I wanted the fence to come all the way to the edge, the pathing would have an issue, and so either I would have to make this a really weird corner, or what I did was just add that little extra bit, and then by doing that, I could do the same thing on this side. So instead of this path only having access to these 3 foundations, and it cutting off like right here, basically if there's anything like right here where the road barriers would have come to, this has a really hard time getting around that corner. So I just brought the corner in, and it has a much easier time going around here. And let's see how well it navigates doing one corner and then another corner. Let me continue this right down to there. I finished the road, and of course, there's a bean in one. Oh good, he's not actually stuck. Now it navigates around the rock. Go straight for a little bit longer, then we ramp down a little bit, come down here, and then do a long ramp to our final destination. Right here at the very end, I can place my water extractors. Somewhere here in the middle, a truck station. And to do fluids, I need to make sure that I use the fluid truck station. They operate exactly the same, but the inputs and outputs are very different. So obviously I could just plop this down and then do a little bit of decorating. But if I really want to start taking advantage of all the vehicles, I think it'd be best if I come up with some blueprints. Here's the first of my creations. So I designed these to fit in a Mark 1 blueprinter for two reasons. One, because I wanted to share them, and you do have tractors before you get the Mark 2 blueprinter, so it would be nice if it was available earlier in the game. And two, I may not like to make everything super compact, but it would be pretty nice if I could make some things like this a little bit more compact and easy to place multiple of if I need them. So I've got some fix-it walls, window, big concrete pillars here on the side. And then when we pull through, we've got the double gates. Here's our truck station. And then this one is designed so that the trucks can just pull straight through. I thought it would just be easiest to have everything connected, and then that way I can just delete the two that I don't need, or the three, I guess, that I don't need, instead of having to fiddle around and add them later. So that's the only reason all of these are connected. You can't use one truck station to do both input and output. So don't forget to delete the ones that you're not going to use, because when you look at it from the outside, it's really hard to tell. Now you could add signs if you wanted to, but the way I plan on using this is once I know that this is going to be the pickup side or the drop-off side, I'll just place it and then delete the ones I don't need. Alright, so pretty basic, but I think it dresses up the truck station a little bit. And I think there's going to be a lot of places where this setup is going to be super useful. But for this location, I think I could do things a little bit better. Ta-da! My corner station. So now the trucks can pull in on one side, dock, and then pull out through the corner. So in locations like this where the spacing's a little bit tighter, I think this will be a little bit better for them to kind of navigate through. But with this one I decided to make the roof flat because that was just going to be a whole lot easier to work with than the way I did the other one. And same thing as the other one, you've got all four connections, so you just need to delete the ones you're not going to be using. And if you need solids, you just delete this truck station, put in the other one, and swap out the wall holes. Eventually, I'll need a version of these truck stations that handle the solids instead of the fluids, so I'll just swap out the truck stations and then change these connections in the back here. I didn't want to make it overly complicated or ridiculously expensive to build, but I do think that something like this is going to be just a little bit nicer than having the truck station out in the open. One of the great things, and definitely underappreciated, I think, with making blueprints like these, is now I know exactly where my path is going to be. Whereas if I try to place just the truck station, I don't know where the paths go nearly as well. But if I have it built inside the blueprint already, well, I know that I built the truck path to go directly straight through this gate. So I just want to line the gate up with the middle of a foundation, and that'll make things a little bit easier. Probably going to need a little bit more space on this side. But it does make figuring out where exactly everything's going just a little bit easier in my opinion. And yeah, we can come inside and see where the path is. Make sure everything's lining up real nice. Ah, beautiful. After a few more additions and a little recoloring, my water stop is ready. I didn't notice that pipe clipping through the pillar. Oh, I'll just need to space these out just a tiny bit farther. That's okay, I've got space. Both of my water extractors are clocked to 216.66 repeating, giving me the total of 433 1/3, which is exactly what I'm looking for. So at most, it's only going up 6 meters, meaning the water extractors are fine all by themselves. I don't need any pumps. And if we take a look at the path, they just go all the way out here into the truck station, out that side, and then continue the loop. So now, I don't think this is actually going to reach anywhere useful. Nope, we're just going to have to extend the tower. Probably, since this is going to be a permanent one, I should probably just figure out. It's going to have to redo some of the power up there and branch it over. And I'll just let the truck station and all the pipes back up. And that way, when it's time to use it, it's all ready to go. Now that I have these simple road blueprints, I am going to go over there and replace that temporary road with these. Now, both of the simple roads lead to this little square. This is going to be where the drop-off truck stations are. And I've got my new simple road. And now it ramps all the way down. And now I have blueprints for the 1 meter ramps, 2 meter ramps, and the 4 meter ramps. Just as a quick little side note, if you're making roads, just keep in mind that the vehicles can go up a 4 meter ramp no problem. Your rail lines will not be able to. Any amount under the 4 meters, you'll be fine. So you could make custom ramps to be just ever so slightly less than the grade of a 4 meter ramp, and you'll be fine. But once you hit I guess that would be 50% grade, you're rising 4 meters for every 8 meters you run. Anything under that, the trains can do. And if you want to make a bunch of custom ramps, I've got a video for you. But if it's just going to be a road for the ground vehicles, you can make them pretty steep actually. But if I want them any steeper than this, then I have to do it custom and they end up having to be pillars instead of being able to just use foundations. And it's hard to go wrong with just the simplicity of foundations. So I think I'm probably just going to stick to 4 meters even though I could make them go up even steeper ones. Originally I had these automated gates on both sides, but as you'll notice, this side is red, and if I build off of it, this part stays red. These gates just don't go back quite far enough, and maybe it's that the path needs to be over 1 more meter. Actually, I am kind of curious. If I move this... No, I guess that's still not far enough. But if I delete both of them, now all of a sudden it turns blue. Oh, so maybe it was the top one. Oh, okay, so it was the top door. So basically, you just can't have the path go through the center of the door because they don't slide all the way over. It's 1 meter over from the center of the door and you'd be fine. So I could redo this, or I think I might just dress it up and leave it as 2 open holes for this one. I'm not sure, but just keep that in mind. If you use the automated gate holes, just don't center the path on the door. The roll-up gates are really fantastic because they're 2 foundations instead of the 1. I prefer these ones. I just didn't quite have the space in here. So I just wanted a window instead of it being just all doors here. Alright, so now just need to connect these paths, dress up the doors a little bit more, and then I'm going to get started on those drop-off truck stations. I could have nudged the gates and made those work, but it also gave me the opportunity to just add more signs. And now we've got blue pathing all the way down to our 2 new truck stations. I've got quite a bit of work cut out for me when I get to the decorating phase, but I got my truck stations and my pathing. So to make sure everything fit, I used the universal path because that's what's saved on the actual blueprints. And then once I got to the actual truck station area, I just switched the pathing to the tractor, and apparently there's no issue with that. Thankfully in this situation it works out great because the only thing on this path is going to be 1 single tractor, and so we can go back and forth. But something like this would mean I could never use a truck. A truck wouldn't be able to go from the universal to the tractor path. The 2 paths get real close, but it's not quite close enough to create an intersection. Even if there was an intersection, both of them have such a short trip, like it wouldn't make any sort of difference. But in the future, that's probably not going to be the case, so I figure it's a good habit to get into. That takes care of half of the truck stations I need. Now I can come over to this side, and I think I'm going to place some more truck stations over here. I think this area over here would be perfect for a truck station. I could put the truck stations on this side, and then one of the paths can run right in between the pillar and the factory. It'll be cool. There is one downside. This limestone node is kind of in the way. Since it's an impure limestone node, I am just going to sacrifice this one. If somehow in this save I end up being short 1 impure limestone node, I will probably laugh pretty hard. I don't think that's going to be the case, so I think I'm going to end up more or less just paving over this. Because this is just such a good location. If it was something more valuable, then it would be a tougher decision. but an impure limestone is probably one of the least valuable. Limestone node? I don't know what you're talking about. I've got my 2 truck stations. A normal truck station for the compacted coal, and a fluid truck station for the crude oil. Since my roads are laid out with right-hand drive, the vehicles will come in this way, turn down here, they'll go into the truck station and then go to whichever one is appropriate. They'll go straight through. They'll make a left and head down this way and make their way back onto the road. If I wanted to just use the ground, they could have actually made their way along here, up and around, and I think I could have made it work. But let's be honest, there was no way I was going to put the actual truck stations on the ground. Using the simple road blueprints, I just created some ramps to get all the way down to here, and then from here, I don't mind using the ground a little bit. So once we get to the ground, then the road is just going to go right up the natural road. Once we get to my main highway, this is where the crude oil is. And so I think what I'm going to do is just extend this. So here's my thinking. We'll just place that there temporarily. The vehicles will come down this way, and since we've got right-hand drive, they'll go past the truck station, and then they'll just make a U-turn. So there will be some intersections in this area. They'll make the U-turn, and then, yeah, that's definitely not quite in the right spot. But then the truck can come in here, get its crude oil, and now it's already on the correct side of the road. So now it just needs to merge up with the road and head over to the truck station up there. And then the other vehicle will just continue on straight through, and then it's going to make its way over to the compacted coal tower. It's flat enough that I didn't really want to pave a road the entire way when I could just use the ground. And I think it's close enough that it shouldn't really matter if it takes longer. The road would definitely make the whole trip shorter, but I don't think it actually needs to be shorter. That is much better. The crude oil just plugs right into the back. And now we've got a bit of an intersection here in the front. So since the trucks will be going this way, the fluid truck will make a left and pull into the truck station. This path right here doesn't actually need to exist because the tractor that's coming from the other side is never going to pull into there. So whether it's there or not really doesn't matter. But this is a little bit more accurate to what's going on. So the tractor will continue its path, and I'll show you that in just a second. And then when it's coming back, it'll just skip the truck station and head around. And then on this side, when the fluid truck leaves, then it just comes over here, joins up, and they head on their way over to the truck stations to drop everything off. Alright, so the tractor is going to head this way. I thought about creating a ramp for it to drive up, but going around this little outcropping doesn't really take it too long. It's going to head its way up this way. Might as well keep the tree. And then once we got to this spot, then I needed some more actual ramps and roads. So we just ramp up just a little bit and then ramp back down. And here is another corner truck station for the compacted coal. I just needed to delete a few foundations to be able to fit my power tower on top. And now when I'm ready, I can just delete the smart splitter, which is sending everything to the sink. But when I'm ready to turn this vehicle on, I can just have this sent over to the truck station. It gets plugged in from the back. The truck comes in this way, docks, and then heads out this way. I honestly have no idea what I'm going to do with this area right here in the middle. Originally, I was hoping that I'd be able to squeeze in one more tower of something, because there are a couple other nodes around here. But you know what? If the tower and the truck station are spaced out a little more than they need to, it is okay. Probably something I should just do a little bit more often. If things have breathing room, it also gives you room to make up for mistakes you make in the future. Not like I've ever made those before. With all the machines in place and all the required resources are just ready to get trucked over, I am going to spend way too much time doing some decorating. I may not be anywhere close to the best at this part of the game, but it's a major piece that really makes this game stand out, and I honestly just enjoy it. I like kind of fiddling around with the different pieces and colors and attempting to make things look good. The save is currently at 140 hours and 9 minutes. Give me a second and I'll give you the grand tour. Welcome back to the new Packaged Turbofuel factory. The save is currently at 148 hours and 15 minutes. Yes, your math is correct. This took me just over 8 hours to do. But to me, this is another thing that's kind of similar to the exploration. I think the more you play, the more value you find in it. For me, it breaks up the game. Instead of just going from one factory to the next and numbers, I find it's nice to take a break from that and just spend a little time trying to make it look good. That way I can be proud of the way it looks and functions. Normally when I do my grand tours, I start with the farthest points and work my way back. But we've already gone over all of the satellite parts. Both the canister and the water are ready to go. I just need to turn those vehicles on, but we'll go through all that in a second. Same thing with the compacted coal over there and the crude oil down here. To go on a little tour of the factory and then we'll go through the whole startup process. The tractor for the compacted coal and the fluid truck for the crude oil are ready to go. So this is their little housing here. On either side, we've got little doorways. So this takes me back to the little bit of load balancing that I needed to do. Since it's a little crowded in there, I'm just going to place the blueprint because of course I made it a blueprint up here so I can show you. I needed 266 2/3, which sounds like that would be just an awful number to get to. And I know this looks crazy, but I promise once I walk you through it, it's not bad. We start with the 270 line. So if we take 270 minus the 266, we'll just do that. But basically, I need 3 1/3. If I put enough 3s in there, then it'll just get rid of it. So this basically simplifies to 1/81. 81 is a power of 3. So what we're doing is we take the 270, we split it into thirds. And we split it into thirds, and into thirds, and into thirds. So on this side, we're grouping up 2 of the thirds every time. 1/3 goes on, 2 of the thirds get split up until we get all the way down. This would be 3, 9, 27, 81. Once we get down to this point, then we just loop that one all the way back to the storage container. Group everything else together, and we've got 266 2/3. So the way this works, I did some we'll just call it tasteful clipping. So I clipped the wall basically right through the truck station, so the inputs and outputs are on this side of the wall. And it looks pretty clean on this side. The compacted coal will get unloaded here, come across the belt, and into the storage container, and then that will get load balanced so that I'm only getting the exact amount that I need, instead of it being the full 270 and eventually my belt's backing up. And that right there is a large reason why I really like the load balancing, as it just makes all the belts flow nice and evenly. The compacted coal will go out here and into the factory. This wall hole will be bringing in the packaged turbofuel to feed both this and the other truck station. So it comes along here and plugs into the fuel bay. Alright, now let's take a look at the other side. The packaged turbofuel will just flow across the top. Temporarily, I have a priority merger and just a bin of some extra coal. It's going to take the fluid truck a few trips to fill everything up. I don't need to do any load balancing, but the pipe just heads right out through here, right alongside the truck station, and right here I've got my pump. It comes through the roof, and then up and over. Do I technically need a fluid buffer? No, I really don't. The truck station itself actually has more cargo capacity than the industrial storage buffer. So this is definitely overkill. But come on, I had this little rocky outcropping of a pillar. What else was I going to put here? It just fits. So we've got a fluid buffer, and then the pipe will just head straight into the factory. And as you can see, the trucks will exit the truck station. They'll head down here, turn the corner, and then head back on their way to go get more product. But before we get to the inside, let's take a quick look at the rest of the outside. I don't know if I'm going to use this again, because I've made it, I probably will. But this is my little circus tent of beams. And I've got a priority power switch and a light switch in here. And that way I can have a power tower nearby, connect that to the top, and that's my connection to the main power grid. And now I've got a convenient place to put both of the switches. There aren't that many lights. I pretty much just have one on this side for where the vehicles exit, and then some of the normal street lights here on the entrance. This ended up overhanging by quite a bit. And these are the fun pillars I came up with to help support it. And you already know, I made this a bunch of blueprints. So the pillar supports are really basic. It's just a whole bunch of the concrete pillars. Just big concrete pillars, just kind of spaced out around each other. And then I just added some label signs in the corners. And then I made a giant flat circle out of the large pillars. So it's certainly not a perfect circle by any means, but it's pretty close. If you're going to make something like this, I highly recommend blueprinting it because it is a little bit tedious. I will give you the quick crash course on how to do it though. So I find it easiest if you find the very center of your blueprinter. So I think that should be, yep, right in the middle. This is the Mark II. And now what you want to do is you're just going to keep starting from the exact same spot. So depending on what pillar you're using, and if you want to make sure that everything's kind of fitting in here, not weird, I might just start up 2 meters. Now for the very first one, it actually doesn't really matter how long you make it. Now the trick to this is you're never going to snap to the end of the beam. You're always going to start the pillar at the very center. So this is going to work best if your circle is in increments of 4 meters because that's how long the pillars are. Now you could do a custom length. This first one is obviously going to get deleted because it's on the wrong side. If I wanted to make this 4, that would be 20 meters, and that would be easy. If I wanted to do, 2 meters less, you would place one here, and then the second one, you would have to nudge back 2 meters. So it's just going to be more work, but you could definitely do it. So we'll just place that one there. And then if this is going to be a whole circle, I might as well place the other ones on this side. And now I'm going to delete the center too. And if this is going to be a circle, we do it on all 4 sides. And delete the center ones, and now let's delete those. Now what we do is we start at the same point, 2 meters up. Now I'm going to switch it to freeform. Now I'm going to come to the very edge of the pillar. And if you keep it consistent, so I went to the left side of that pillar, we go to the left side of this pillar. And really you only need 2 sides because you can extend it the other way. Okay, so now, like I said, we don't want to attach it to the very end, we want to attach to the start. Attach it to the start, and we zoom it out the exact same amount. Delete those 2, and then do the same thing on this side. Delete the middle 2. Now if we look at it, that is not very smooth. And that's because I actually alternated and I skipped every other one. So this is actually going to get deleted, but I need it for the placement. So now we delete both of those, start 2 meters up. We go to this one right here. And now this one. And now I can go ahead and just delete these. I really only needed the last one. And now we start at the middle again. Zoom out our 5. This time we can go in both directions though. Okay, I accidentally placed that one at the wrong spot on the beam. Now it's in the right spot. Delete this one. And now do both sides. And now when we take a look at the very ends, now they line up just right. One edge right next to the other. about as perfect as you're going to get them. And we can go around and look at all four sides, make sure that we did everything right. And then you just continue the pattern. So like I said, it takes a little while to do, but I think it was worth it. These pipes have absolutely no function. I just thought they would look cool. Instead of enclosing the entire factory and placing lots of windows like I did with the plastic and rubber, or those towers over there, I thought this would be a good candidate to just leave it as an open air factory. I used a lot of foundations for the walls, and instead of windows, just left big old holes in the wall instead. On the other side, I tried to add a little bit more depth, and instead of using glass, over here I just used the frame walls, which I think are a pretty good replacement for windows a lot of the time. And then we can come inside the truck station. We've got the water truck, and then the tractor for the canisters ready to go. Just like the other fluid truck, I think this one is going to have to run for a little while to get everything backed up, so I have some extra coal to get this running. This will make a little bit more sense once we actually get things started. Bean, I don't even know how you fit through that gate. I kind of want to see the bean do the limbo through the door. Alright, if we go through this door, that's where the empty canisters are going, and then we're using the exact same blueprint. Strangely enough, the amount of compacted coal I need is the exact same amount of empty canisters I need after I create the little bit from the polymer resin. So this just fits snugly back here, and then the empty canisters that I need just head right out and into the factory. And if we sneak through the other side over here, there's just a really tiny walkway, and we've got the two pipes, and then the fuel is going to come through here. So for right now it's coal, but eventually this will be the packaged turbofuel. And then I've got two pipes coming out of the truck station. So let's head into the factory and let me show you where that is going. So we've got a walkway from there right into the back. The two water pipes are emptying out here. The Mark 1 pipe is just running right along the truck station building and over to the two refineries that only need the measly 33 1/3 water. The Mark 2 pipe is heading out to the front, and then it is feeding all of the fuel refineries. I really liked my glass floors with the lights through the middle, so I did that again on this one. I decided to go with what I said and place the mergers on the top here, and this is collecting all of the finished product of the packaged turbofuel, and then it all meets up at the very end. And then this door right here, if we go through it real quick, this is the front entrance where that truck station is and where the crude oil is plugging into the factory. That just comes down here and into the front and plugs into all of these refineries. And then I've got a bunch of stairs so that I can get to the top floor. This right here is where the compacted coal is coming up and then plugging into here. And then it goes around, and this part I had completely forgot about. Silly me. But the load balancing is exactly the same like it was for the empty canisters. The empty canisters are just on the inside, whereas the compacted coal got load balanced on the outside. Let's talk about how we're going to start this monstrosity up. If you've been wondering why in the world this cable is just clipping straight through the floor, it's not permanent. I want to have just the truck stations powered on, and I'm going to get both of the fluid trucks started, but I'm going to leave the factory turned off. I want both of the truck stations and my giant fluid buffer over here to completely back up so that I've got a nice full buffer and all of the pipes are full. Once that happens, then I'll flip the switch, get the factory going, and then when it's time, I'll get the tractor started. But by waiting to turn on the compacted coal, this factory will never get completely going, making this really easy to do in stages. So for right now, I'm actually using compacted coal because I'm just sinking so much of it. It was easy just to grab plenty, and so now I'm going to power the two fluid trucks on the compacted coal for the meantime, and then we'll switch to the packaged turbofuel later. But you know what, let's go ahead and jump in. The crude oil is going to take longer, so taking this one for a ride and then starting the water truck won't really mess with the overall timing at all. The water will finish much sooner because it doesn't have a huge buffer to fill up. Alright, so we can zoom in on the map and take a look. So this is its short little path, and on compacted coal, that number is probably pretty close. That's not right. But then when we switch to packaged turbo fuel, this thing's really not going to go through that much fuel. Let's go get some oil. And there it goes. Both of the fluid trucks are up and running until they run out of coal. But those two little trips taught me a lot. And it turns out the trucks really don't like the road barriers. Well, at least if you build a road this small. I don't think the tractors are going to have any issue with the simple road that I made. The trucks, it seems like it's just a little too small, which probably affects its speed. It probably can't get up to full speed when it has to keep running into these things, but on those long stretches it does pretty well. I was thinking maybe swapping to all beams really is the answer, but if I put a beam on the horizontal, I'm probably going to put like a beam connector, or I would want to put something right here, and I think they're basically the same size. So I can't imagine that the truck would do better with the beam connector over the little road barrier. Though I'm still not exactly sure how I want to do the middle of these roads, but I'm probably going to make a change in the future. But this works, and the trucks have plenty of time, so the fact that they run a little bit slower than they could doesn't really matter because the round trip is so short. Now I'm just going to let these fluid trucks run for a while and let everything back up. Once the pipes are full, then we'll get everything started. Well, it took about an hour, but my fluid buffer is all full. I deleted that power line, so now the truck stations are all behind the priority power switch. Originally, I had a priority merger and some of that compacted coal, but my thinking is if I have the truck completely full with compacted coal and one load of compacted coal in here, that's going to be more than enough because once the packaged turbofuel shows up, it'll replace it with the new fuel. Alright, so we have everything prepped. So to get this started, I'm going to flip the switch, which is going to kickstart creating all of the fuel. I'm going to start both of my fluid trucks running again because that's going to start being consumed. And just like with a lot of the other factories, I'm going to let this run until it all backs up. It takes a little bit longer to start up, but in my experience, everything just runs a little bit smoother if all of the pipes are full. Once it's all backed up, then we'll get the compacted coal going, and then the canisters last. Let's start the stopwatch. That's the last of the machines to back up. The polymer resin refineries are going to keep making stuff, but that one I'm not too worried about. Since those are using such little water, the water's backed up. The truck can only drop off a little bit of water each time now. I'm pretty sure if we come out here and, yep, this is completely full. And if we come down here, I bet you even the truck station is full. And the truck station is full. So that's the nice thing about having so much of a buffer, is there's probably even a little bit of a buffer in that truck station, but it's not going to be completely full. But I think that's okay. Really, I just want everything on this side of things to be backed up, and that's going to be a huge buffer. So now let's kickstart the rest of the factory. Let's go on a little tractor ride. Pick up to drop off. Here we go. The heavy oil residue ran for so long that they've pretty much given all of these a pretty nice buffer, and so that's why I didn't need to turn on the empty canister tractor right away, but I definitely don't want these to run out, so let's go ahead and go downstairs and get that thing started. One last tractor ride. The factory is fully operational. A couple things I forgot about in the tour. I added a whole bunch of catwalks around for the refineries, and it works pretty well. I can't remember if I've mentioned this before, but these awesome new round concrete beams, normally they're just the default gray, and this isn't a huge difference. But we can now color them. And if you didn't know, you can actually access all of your color swatches if you hold down E. Or you could just press E a whole bunch of times to get to the right one. For a long time, these couldn't accept any colors, but now you can. This is one whole subcategory, so you can switch to any of these colors, and then if you go to the finishes, you can switch in between these. So I think these are all chrome. They're great for hiding the wall power connections too. The other thing I forgot to show off is where the final product is going. So for right now, I've got my line of packaged turbofuel, and it is coming over to here. And I decided to just enclose it. It's a whole bunch of the small storage containers because I just didn't want this thing to be very big. And then at the very end, we've got the dimensional depot. This is 4 small storage containers, so the equivalent of 2 of the industrial storage containers. For my own personal use, I can't think of a reason that I'm going to go through just a ton of packaged turbo fuel because it's not really the best for the jetpack in my opinion. I may use it from time to time in a couple spots, but ultimately I really just don't see myself going through very much. But I also don't see a reason not to stockpile at least a few containers worth, so I'm going to fill this up, and then I'm going to delete the belt, and I figure that should be more than enough for the save. I'm not going to count on this continuously resupplying. Once it does back up, the smart splitter will kick in, and everything will go into the sink for now. Eventually the turbo fuel is going to make its way over there, but in the meantime, might as well stockpile a bunch. Now for this last part, you could do it a number of different ways, and ultimately, I don't really know how much of a difference it's going to make. All of the packaged turbo fuel is getting grouped together at this merger, and then we're going down to the ground floor. And then it goes into a smart splitter. And this is where I have a Mark 1 belt, so about 60. Now the tricky part with doing this is this belt isn't completely full, and so every once in a while, there will probably be a gap on this belt. And normally that would be a problem because it would throw off all of my other numbers down the line. But in this instance, it doesn't actually matter. Because if we follow this line of packaged turbo fuel, it goes all the way to another smart splitter. Honestly, at this point, I really could have used just a normal splitter. It really wouldn't have made any difference. This was more or less for the startup process. I thought this would run smoother if I made sure one truck station got filled right away, and then the other one. But this is where the packaged turbo fuel goes into the truck station and then fuels both of those. And then on the other side, this lift goes up and over everything until we get to this side, and then we've got another smart splitter. This splits the fuel between the 2 different truck stations over here. And then once those finally back up, the rest of it is going to come along here and then join up with the rest of the packaged turbo fuel. So I could have sent the whole line of turbo fuel around the factory to fuel everything. But where I can, I really like to use the Mark 1 belts. Just puts all your parts on a nice display. That is going to do it for this one. I know it was a bit of a longer one for this series, so thank you so much for being here. I now have 333 and a third packaged turbo fuel piling up in my storage and dimensional depot. With trucks and fluid trucks only using 2.25 per minute, this will be able to fuel a very large fleet of vehicles. I will most likely never use all of it, and this is a bit overkill. But you never know, there's multiple uses for this stuff. With the power and space elevator multipliers so high, it really is the first 2 phases that are the most difficult. Power is going to be a concern until I finish the game. Phase 3 and oil power is still not fantastic, but it's enough to get me to the next phase. That's why I don't mind what seems like a giant waste of power right now to take care of vehicle fuel for the rest of the playthrough. That being said, I do need to add a little bit more power to build the other 2 space elevator parts. So look forward to that, and thanks for watching.